like it's just a matter of time, right?
Right. We're robots. We're whatever we are.
All right, so we're live at the Center Film Festival, another live stream Q&A here from Penn State in the 339 intermediate alternative production techniques. Same class. We don't have the same setup today. Unfortunately, we don't have an extra camera to point out at the room, but students are going to drop in front of this camera on this side of things to ask questions to the lovely and talented Lynn Sachs, the filmmaker who made Film Without a Father Who, which is playing here at the Center Film Festival virtually. This film has been an incredible hit, Lynn. It's been such an exciting time to watch it happen. Criterion, endless film festival.
Thank you, Gabby, for your encouragement.
It's a delight. I've really enjoyed watching it multiple times now at a few different platforms.
You're an expert.
Oh, hardly.
And I can now say you're an expert on my life because you know a lot about me. And I don't know that much about you. And since you're wearing a mask, I don't even know quite what you look like.
That's true, and it's been a long time since we were in the same room.
Oh, right, back at Mass College of Art, of course.
That's right. I saw you at the Mass Art Film Society a few years ago, and it was a really excellent program of your short films.
Yes.
You sort of alluded to this project, but weren't quite finished with it yet.
Not even close. Yes.
Right. And so I wonder if you can talk a little bit. I mean, this is a film you were made over 30 years. If you can talk a little bit about this process of sort of long filmmaking.
Yeah, well, actually, it's interesting that we met when I was showing short films, because one of the things that got me over the hump of finishing the editing on this project was that I decided that I wasn't looking for a thesis or the vertebrae that was going to hold it all together. I decided I would make essentially 12 experimental documentary films with the different conceits and sort of explorations related to family, related to archival images, or related to all the different challenges that I was exploring. And then I did that for a year in 2018. And then in 2019, I pulled those films all apart and turned it into one film. But in a sense, I did that just to kind of convince myself that it was possible to make this movie and that I could think about it in these small distillations. And that actually was also a turning point that I was in my work, that I understood that an image could be a distillation for a really big idea, like the combing of my dad's hair started to be about relationships between generations, and the notion of like a person who lives in a sense outside the rules, like an older man who likes long hair, but as it grays, he becomes more a part of like sort of a person who's given care, who needs care, rather than a forced resistance. So those were different things that I was really playing with.
Yeah, I mean, Lynn, one of the other things I found interesting, so my students were assigned to listen to the interview you gave to the Into the Boss Life podcast.
Just one second. Would you
just
charge my phone over there for 5 minutes?
I don't see where there's
Just one second. I'm going to try to charge my phone.
Oh, absolutely. So for everybody
just
tuning
over
in,
there, would it be okay?
Well, this is not my
Lynn Sachs is on the move with a dying phone.
Oh, thank you.
Trying to do us the solid of finding a place to charge.
Yeah, I'm going to do it right now.
Great.
This is really on the go.
This is fantastic, though. This is like the most COVID in some ways.
Yeah. Okay, just 1 second.
Absolutely. So if people want to start to form a line behind HK, that would be excellent. And it would make me feel a little bit more at ease.
I'm back on target. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, I have students starting to line up to ask questions. So just when you sit in the seat, just introduce yourself to Lynn before you ask your question. So they're going to start to sort of filter in to ask you things. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Hi, Lynn.
Hello, thank you. I'm sorry that I'm so discombobulated
Oh,
today.
you got it more together than me. I'm HK, and I have a question about, because throughout watching most the film featured in the festival, Father Who, I really watched it, and I was wondering your interview process, because you've been working on films for so long, and this film includes footage from like over 30 years. And I'm just curious how like your interview process evolved, because it's something that like you even see in the film is not just like you trying to tell a story, but you trying to get other people to tell their stories and how they relate to each other. It feels like it's a very interesting and interpersonal process, and I'm really interested how you kind of develop that.
Well, I'll say that you really hit something that was definitely a revelation for me. And that was that the conventional interview per se wasn't working for me, particularly with my dad, because every time I asked him the same questions, that one asks, like your parents or your grandparents. So tell me about your childhood. He would tell me about his childhood, but he wouldn't go into an introspective mode. And maybe it was because he's a man of a certain generation, but there's plenty of men of that generation born in the 1930s who might have access to their inner world in a more flexible and available way. But my father didn't. He is much more a man of action, and more like you learn about him through his deeds rather than what he articulates about the way his mind works. And I also realized that as I was interviewing all my siblings, that each time I asked a question, in a sense, they were looking back at me, not just as the oldest sister, but as the director of this movie. The way actors look at, the director, and they say, and the director sort of nods, like, "Good job," and that you always nod when you're doing an interview. You're always giving some form of affirmation or shock or dismay or disappointment. So then I started doing these interviews in the dark, and I did them as just audio, so people weren't fretting about how they looked, which I can say honestly, over the 30 years I made in this film, the last 5 years were the hardest in terms of people being cautious about where is my image going, and you understand why, with the digital distribution that all of us are part of. So if I did it in the dark, there was this opportunity for my siblings and in the film to go inward and to be introspective without playing around with, am I delivering what Lynn wants? And so that was a big breakthrough with me. I actually wrote an essay about that for a documentary magazine, which is online, called Talk House, which you can easily find if you just type my name and Talk House. And I wrote about, that importance of being in the dark. And I think that I also used that in my voiceover or narration, because I was having such a hard time writing out in my journal what I wanted to say, because there was always this tension between the literary me and the unfiltered me. So I just started to record my own voice. And then I sent it off to a transcription service. And 2 days later, I had 15 pages of text, which was my really like my opportunity to step away from Lynn, the director, and be Lynn, the daughter. So those were two, let's call them like process modes or operating modes that I had never used before, that became evident when I was facing a lot of obstacles in this film.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Incredible.
I totally recommend doing interviews in total darkness.
Awesome. Definitely something I'm going to try out soon.
Hi, Lynn. My name's Torin. I really enjoyed your film. I thought it was really cool that you were so like vulnerable, like showing your family's business, and I felt like very related with your film. And I just wanted to know, was there any point in time, because you spent 30 years making this and you're getting so much information, that you felt that maybe you bit off more than you can chew? And then how did you move on past that?
So when I say 30 years, I don't mean that I was thinking I'm making a film about my father. I just was filming, actually, I will take that back. I started filming in 84. That's more than 30 years ago, but I was just filming my life and he was in it. But then in 91, so that is exactly 30 years ago, exactly, I said, I want to make a film about dad because dad's a rule breaker. Dad's someone I understand, but also don't understand. And I also don't understand what my relationship is with him. So the camera became both a license to ask all the questions I want to do and a little bit like a curtain I could hide behind. So it was a little bit of both. And when you asked about were there points where I like bit off more than I thought I could, I mostly bit off more than I thought. I mean, almost everything was that way. And because the camera would activate things, like towards the end, you saw the conversation with all the members of my family, and making the film became it's sort of like a catalyst for getting us all into one space, but also for making us think independently about our own relationships with our father. I think often in families, people think there's a unified vision of mom or dad, but actually each of us in a family has a very distinct language. Like I talk about, but I give a distinct language. I think there's a distinct language about truth. There's a distinct language about lying, but in between that is that whole territory around what we've come to call white lies that I think people do all the time. Like we choose what we're going to say and how we're going to frame it with every single person in a family.
Thank
So
you.
I had to be like cognizant of that.
Thank you so much.
What's up, Lynn? How's it going? I really liked your film, first off, but I have like an odd question, not really about your film, sort of about like just art in general. I'm an artist that makes like weird abstract art, and like just this is like, no, it's over here. This is like some just weird art that I did. I was wondering, do you think one day that I'll be able to like create a documentary just through art pieces?
Oh my God. I mean, I am so into objects. I made a film. You can find it on the Criterion channel right now. If you get the Criterion channel, and if you don't, you can sign up for free for a couple of weeks in a trial. Made a whole film with objects with my daughter. So
Really?
I'm really into what people call like the ontology of objects. And I don't think you need people at all.
Okay.
So I'm all for that. I mean, think about the painters who made still lifes and all those different things that were, let's say, expressions of how you see relationships, but not necessarily about humans. And I think there's too much emphasis on the face, too much emphasis on like beauty in a very conventional sense. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm getting at what you're trying to say, but I think you could do things with like patches or any kinds of objects, and also play with the sound and have, if you want something human in it, the sound could be that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, you definitely hit all the points that I was looking for. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope, look at that movie and send me a note.
Okay, I definitely will. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Hi, Lynn. How are you?
Good. I like your braids.
Oh, thank you. My name is Tusha, by the way. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to our class and whatnot. So my question for you is, you mentioned when you were answering Torin's question that you didn't really know your relationship with your father as well. So my question is, during this interview process of like the documentary, obviously, did you discover any new relationships, or did you learn anything from your siblings that like you might not have known before?
That's like super interesting. I think that I started making this film thinking it was very much a daughter's view on her father. And I learned from my brothers that it's also a movie about masculinity. The oldest of my brothers, Ira Jr., said to me, "Oh, he thought it was really a film about masculinity because each of my brothers, and I think any son
looks to your father and you say, what are the shadings of masculinity? And this is true for women too. What are the shadings that I accept? Like, do I want to be, is that the kind of heterosexual person I want to be? Or you don't necessarily make those choices in a really conscious way, but they happen. Like, how do we model on the first important person who is gendered in our lives? And, like, one of my brothers is gay and two of my brothers are what you call straight, but they are not necessarily the same. Like, one of my brothers talks in the film about, well, people thought of dad as the Hugh Hefner of Park City, but that's a certain way of being and dealing with sexuality. It's very overt. And to tell you the truth, my brothers are not like that. I don't know if they consciously said, I don't want to be like dad, but they, you're always deciding, how will I inhabit my sexuality? And I think that was something that, and in our society, we don't really acknowledge, to me, enough. I think women are actually given more opportunities to really stretch that and play with it and write poetry about it. And I think that notion of, like, men are also searching for how to be in the world. I think that was something that I learned from my brothers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Your film was
You're
helpful. Thank you.
Can I ask how many more students are there?
Me and one more.
Okay, so we'll do that, and then I'm sorry I have to go.
Okay,
I'm really loving this. I'm having a ball.
mine's super quick, I promise. My name is Mary Kate, and I'm just wondering if this was a super long process and it was a personal one. Were you ever discouraged at all by society or family or yourself while you were making this?
Well, that's interesting. I was discouraged all the time, and I did a lot of other things in between. And there were sometimes, like, a year or two when I wasn't working on this movie. I wasn't working on this movie every day of my life. It was like the movie kept coming back to say, finish me. And all my siblings kept saying, when are you going to finish that dad film? But one of the things that was problematic and interesting was to finish the film during the height of the Me Too movement. Like, to finish a movie when we're really talking about what is it for us as women to deal with men in power. But my father wasn't in a power position in an office, but there are power dynamics that have to do with money, that have to do with age, that have to do with position in a town, and all those things. And it's really like an exchange. What sometimes people are very transactional about what they want, and that's really unfortunate, but it is part of, like, modern life. And so I had to, like, think about that in light of the Me Too movement, because my film expresses both the rage I had with that in mind, but also it has love. And so and compassion and forgiveness. So, like, do I hide the forgiveness or do I hide the rage? And how do I find a vessel to contain both of those things?
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name's Marissa. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, like, the relationship the geography had with this film about your father, and how, like, possibly distance between you and your family contributed to,
That
like,
is totally fascinating, and it's changed a lot during the pandemic, because we live in, I have siblings in Georgia, Tennessee, Utah, Washington, D.C., New York State, and North Carolina. So we actually had never all been together until I shot the scene in my brother's living room. And one of my sisters was only there on a cell phone. But since that time, and maybe because of the movie, because it was a kind of unifying aspect of making the film, we've actually started to meet every single Sunday afternoon or evening with my father. So I think that, as we all know, COVID, like, both estranged, like, separated us and siloed us and atomized us. But COVID also made us more aware of the importance of family. And like, you know, I actually just lost my father-in-law, not because of COVID, but I think that his isolation took a toll. And I think that, you know, I had, and also in terms of geography, I decided to commit to flying a couple of my siblings to me or flying to them to do these interviews. And in a way, I think they appreciated that. They were like, oh, Lynn's going to get on a plane and come all the way here because she takes my point of view seriously. And that was, I think, a affirmation of my respect for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So Gabby is still there. I'm sorry, I have to go now. I hope
No,
this was
I am
helpful.
so grateful for you taking the time to talk to us today before you head abroad. And so bon voyage and
treat.
thank you.
And all of y'all enjoy the Cinder Film Festival. I wish I could be there. I would have been there, except that I have to go out of the country. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll stop